And good morning. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, but we've got several Facebook groups we want to bring in today. So we've got Mile High Huddle, a couple of those. We've got Atlanta Falcons fan on all Falcons. We've got Scott Kennedy Sports, and we've hit the limit, so we'll just skip that one. So we'll add those in. And as everybody comes in, we'll try one more time on Scott Kennedy Sports. And we are live. Good morning, everybody. This is a little bit different show. Same faces, a little bit different locales. We are collaborating between several of our different channels because, one, we want to talk Senior Bowl and all of these coaching changes in football to a broader audience than just Falcons and Broncos or Falcons or Broncos. We want to talk Falcons and Broncos and Panthers and oh my. We also want to talk some Senior Bowl stuff. So we're hitting a bunch of these different places all across the net all at once. So collaboration between Broncos for Breakfast, Coast to Coast Football, the Falcons podcast, all of these in together. The other part of this is because I'm gone for a week after this. So we wanted to make sure we did a full Coast to Coast Football podcast for this Wednesday instead to talk Senior Bowl. And Nick is going to be gone tomorrow. So we didn't plan this together, but we're both gone for a week. So Nick will be here for Broncos for Breakfast tomorrow. And then after that, we will be off for a week. So wanted to get that said. So we wanted to make sure we had a nice, big, happy family podcast this morning. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain. Stayed up last night a little bit too late, so tired, but doing well. Watched one of my favorite all-time movies in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. So
I
that
can
that
see
movie.
your hoo-ha.
God, yeah, that movie just kills me every time. It's no matter how many times I watch it, I will laugh my brains out.
So Nick, I
But
keep a ranking of like the marrying type of girls,
mhm.
and she makes it on this one. God, I'm blowing her name already, but her character,
Which one? Because there's two.
no,
There's
not
Kristen
Sarah
Bell
Marshall on this one. She's a little too high maintenance for me.
in this
The
one, yeah, but she's awesome in real life. Mila
Jackie from
Kunis.
the '70s show, and I'm blowing her name.
Mila.
She kind of ruined it by schlepping cheap bourbon, but yeah, that character is like that's who I want in my life right there.
Mila Kunis.
Yes,
Yes.
Mila Kunis.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. Mila Kunis. Yeah, that's a love Jason Segel in that. One of Jonah Hill's more underrated roles as well. Absolutely great movie. And also, since I'm heading off to Hawaii in 48 hours, I figured, hey, let's put that in and celebrate my birthday and enjoy that. And yeah, excited. So we'll be off for a bit. We'll both be in really nice sunny locations, escaping the winter for just a little bit.
And happy birthday, Nick. We got to say that a little bit. So
Thank
happy
you.
birthday to Nick Kendall. He can tell everybody how old he is. I don't really want to tell everybody how old I am. If you want to, Nick. Anyway, let's say hello to some folks. And we recognize most of the folks in the chat, the regulars, and we know kind of which fans you are. But if you're new to the show, say which team you want to talk about. You know, if you want to talk about, hey, what are the Panthers getting? I'm a and Jeremy Sean giving forgetting Sarah Marshall. So there's lots of good one-liners in there.
Mhm.
If you want to talk about the Panthers and Ejiro Evero, we will talk about that a little bit. We will talk some Falcons and Ryan Nielsen. We will talk what are the Broncos going to do for their defensive coordinator. And we will talk a lot of Senior Bowl. This could end up being a 45-minute podcast. This could end up being 90 minutes. We've got it planned for 90. A little bit, that's up to y'all. See how you are enjoying the show and as you bring the questions as we roll through some things. Well, let's say hello to some folks in the chat. Mark's coming in. He says, hope our owner's ready to catch that free agent. If he pays him, he will come. I have a feeling Mark is a Denver Broncos fan. Talking on that one a little bit. And Jeremy Sean says, morning, Nick and Scott. Ejiro Evero, the new defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, must have really thought the Broncos screwed with Hackett. Good luck in Carolina. Hope he never has to fire one of his coaches. I don't see it quite that personal, Nick. What was your initial reaction to Ejiro Evero wanting out of Denver?
This has been in the works since Hackett was fired. This always seemed like it was a possibility with where the Broncos were going. I think, and also the timing of everything. Sean Payton meets with Ejiro Evero, and then about 3 hours later, it's reported that the Broncos are going to bring in Brian Flores and Sean Desai as the interview for the Broncos defensive coordinator spot. So I do think it is very much a Hackett is not fully to blame for the situation in Denver last season, and I don't want to be a part of this anymore because the people who got my best friend fired and set him up to fail are still here. I do think it's actually a little bit personal from him, from what I've gathered, but it's his best friend and it's a business. I get it, and he was gonna be. He also could do this because he had leverage.
Right.
People want Ejiro Evero, so he could play that card and get out of there if he wanted to.
And see, the way I look at it, Nick, is I don't think it's any more personal than any other job. We talk about it all the time. It's a contacts league.
Mhm.
You end up hiring people you've worked with in the past, and I don't think it's, oh, he hired my best friend. I'm hurt about this. It's more along the lines of, I came in with this staff. They're all gone. Now I'm here kind of with people who didn't hire me to begin with. I need a fresh start too. Let's just get a clean break. We can say it's personal about Hackett, but it's really personal about Evero for me. Just that you came in and you saw the circumstances that everything was last year. You've got opportunities for a fresh start. Take it. Take one.
Yeah.
It was the whole thing was a mess last year, and he's got a chance for a clean start with a new coach and a new environment and a fresh start. I don't blame him for that. I really don't think it's all about Hackett. It would have been all about whoever. If Hackett was still in Green Bay and you had hired Kevin McConnell and had the same type of results last year, Evero still would have left this year. I firmly believe that. It was like, listen, it's not about Hackett. It's about Evero. Evero wants a fresh start. The whole thing was a clown show last year.
The
I
defense
want out.
wasn't,
I want a
but
fresh
yeah.
start.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit, just based on the rumblings that I've heard that,
Mhm.
turning down the interim thing. I think that he does not blame Hackett for all the dysfunction last season, and I feel like he got a probably. I think that I used this quote in here before, but one of my people that I talk with, a source on the team, saying one of the least empowered head coaches they've ever seen
Yeah,
on the Broncos.
yeah,
So
we saw that. It's like, and I don't know how much of that he gave up
yeah,
when they were
true.
negotiating with Russell Wilson. Yeah, come in here and you can do this stuff. Did he?
Hmm.
You don't walk into a situation like that. And the Russell
No.
Wilson trade happened after he was hired.
Yep.
So what did he agree to?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't have enough. That's one thing about bringing in Sean Payton. We've said it on here. He's got skins on the wall. He can
Mhm.
say, Wilson, you want to run this? That's cute. This is what we're running. This is the playbook. Where Hackett, God bless him, did not have the credit built up to pull that off. Noah 72 coming in saying, could the Broncos have traded Ejiro Evero? No, they could not. The rules right now are that you can trade high-ranking officials or people in staff. So you can trade a general manager. I think you can trade a team president. And you can trade head coaches, as we obviously have seen here.
Mhm.
But defensive coordinators, as it stands currently, you can't trade coordinators or positional coaches or anything like that. There's been some talk that that might be something broached. Is that the right word? This upcoming offseason in terms of the team meetings where you might be able to trade coordinators. They changed the designation of what's allowable. But for now, no trades allowed for somebody like Ejiro Evero. Maybe you see something like Carolina trade a 6th-round pick for somebody like a Faion Hicks for the Broncos in the draft comes along, where we've seen that before. Broncos have done, specifically with the 49ers, there's been some moves where we're sending personnel, front office person who's a rising star, Adam Peters, over to the 49ers. And then draft day, you're going to give us a 5th-round pick for Capri Bips. Capri Bips is an undrafted free agent caliber player, but you're going to give us a 5th for that. Thank God bless you. So we'll see if anything comes of that. I'm a little bit surprised that he ended up in Carolina, given a lot of the stuff that I had heard he wanted to go to Minnesota.
Mhm.
But off to Carolina, I think Carolina's a better situation. They have far better personnel. You know that I'm a big fan of what Carolina has built roster wise. They don't have a lot of
Mhm.
cap flexibility, but I think he's going to do a lot of fun with that defense out there in Carolina.
He could find himself in a little bit of a situation that he wasn't in Denver, though, with the offense versus the defense. The defense could be leagues ahead of
Hmm.
the offense. And, I know the Falcons were interested in him too. The Broncos denied, and they made a hire with Brian Nielsen before he was released from his contract. I know the Falcons are a pretty good situation too, but maybe not for a defensive coordinator to have success right away, but maybe as a better team. We'll see. They're very opposite. Falcons have built offense. The Carolina Panthers have built defense. Panthers are in a pretty good spot to address their quarterback situation this year, and they got a head coach that knows what to do with chicken salad on at quarterback. He's had some tough. Bradley Conger coming in. He says, "Good morning, Broncos country." Good morning, Bradley. And Joe Cannon, one of our resident Falcons fans, says, "Great morning, Nick and Scott. How about this report about the Falcons looking deep into the smaller schools? When you're out at the Shrine Bowl, when you're at the Senior Bowl, and you see a lot of those guys, you're going to. We've seen the Falcons take a lot of players from the Senior Bowl, and they had a whole coaching staff over at the Shrine Bowl. So wouldn't surprise me a bit. Couple of smaller school guys I would be very, very interested in from the Senior Bowl. Cody Mock, North Dakota State again, guard. He played some center. He played a little bit of tackle, but he was mostly a guard, and he played a little center. Would fit in very, very nicely at that left guard position for the Atlanta Falcons. So someone to keep an eye on if he makes it to the second, third round, possibly. Someone to keep an eye on there.
Yeah, no, you got no stones unturned. We'll see if anybody else emerges through the process. There's always a few guys, some athletic freaks that that didn't start playing until junior year of high school, and then their teams have kept them quiet. Bruce Feldman, actually, I don't know if you've heard this bit, but he works for the Athletic. He does that freaks list every single offseason, and he's complained that it's gotten progressively just significantly more difficult for these small schools to give him information on these players because big schools are coming.
Right.
With the transfer portal
and stuff. Yeah.
And
when
the
you
NIL.
transfer up, you have to sit out a year.
Yep.
Yeah. You go up, you have to sit out a year. And that makes it harder for him. It's like, no, we're not telling you about these guys.
Yep. So it's interesting to see. We'll see. And the testing will obviously we're going to have the combine coming up. That'll reveal some guys as well. They're like, oh, we have a 6'5", 280-pound somebody from who knows where. That's freaking testing like a freak. Maybe he's going to skyrocket.
And the pro days coming up, all kinds of the fun stuff. Because I like the Senior Bowl to say, okay, I like what I saw. Now let's get some perspective to it. They say, there's an old saying that says the film doesn't lie. Baloney. It doesn't lie. Your eyes can lie. I went and watched a kid a long time ago. He was committed to, this was before Alabama was Nick Saban, Alabama. Now you know who's Nick Saban's recruiting just by who walks off the bus in any environment. That's at an all-star game too. But this was Shula days, I think. And there was this kid, offensive lineman, was like, oh, he looks good. I'm up in the stands watching. I'm there. I'm like, okay, yeah, I like the way he's playing. And I walked down and I looked him in the eye. And I'm 6'1". I'm like, oh, your eye, unless you've got perspective, you need to cross-reference all those things. So yes, film lies. You can be fooled by it. So I saw a lot of things I liked at the Senior Bowl. Now I want to see how those measurables add up. And then you kind of weigh the two together to see where you want to put those guys in order. Michael Ranquillo always weighing in. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on Coast to Coast Football and Broncos for Breakfast and the Falcons podcast. We're triple dipping today for everybody coming in. Appreciate you being here, Michael. Dom Jaramillo coming in says, good morning, Nick, Scott, Dog Nation, and Broncos country. So Dom kind of crosses over into Falcons, Bulldogs, Broncos. Appreciate you being here. And Greg Smith is here this morning also. Top of the morning, Broncos for Breakfast. How y'all doing? Jimmy Peoples also says, howdy, y'all. Howdy, Jimmy. Appreciate you being in as well.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Happy Monday. And what are we talking now? Coaching still, Senior Bowl, we talked a little bit. The Broncos are going to, I guess news-wise, Broncos are reportedly bringing in former Miami Dolphins head coach, longtime Patriots defensive assistant, and previously defensive assistant coach and linebackers coach Brian Flores for an interview tomorrow. Brian Flores, obviously, we know about the sued the NFL and included the Broncos in the suit as far as discrimination in his firings and the hiring process. The specifics of that, he said the Broncos showed up late. They showed up smelling of alcohol, hungover, and that's John Elway, Joe Ellis, that group. So prior to George Paton, who's there now, and that his interview was more for show than actually part of the interview process. So that's just what's going on with that. New staff in place for Broncos. If he had issues with that, I don't think he'd take an issue. If he had issues with the new people in place, I don't think he'd take an interview with Denver on Tuesday, but obviously he is. So we'll see what happens. And Brian Flores' defense, this dude loves the blitz. One of the most blitz-happy defensive play callers in football. Plays a lot of cover 1 and cover 0. I feel like I'm a little bit weird in a sense that I'm not really a big fan of all-out pressure cover 0 looks because the explosive plays kill you more than almost anything else in today's NFL. But he's been able to get pressure. He took a Miami Dolphins defense his first year being the head coach there. They are ranked 32nd in defensive DVOA and 32nd in EPA per play. And he got them into the top 10, borderline top 10 is year 2 and year 3 before being fired after finishing 9-7, 9-8, something. I don't remember if it was the first 17 game season. So Brian Flores being interviewed Tuesday, definitely a big name for the Broncos if they are able to bring him in.
When I hear the John Elway showed up hungover, drunk, like this, that type of thing, at that age, when we're talking about a grown man, my first thought on that is alcoholism addiction doesn't discriminate. This isn't a black-white thing, y'all. That sounds like someone with a drinking problem. But I don't know that for sure, but that's kind of my thought. I speak from experience. Addiction does not discriminate. Doesn't care black, white, green, brown, rich, poor. Don't matter. Jeff Cornelison comes in. Good morning, guys. With Javonte Williams' injury with the Denver Broncos and Latavius Murray and Edmonds still here, is it necessary to spend capital on another running back if the O-line is improved? Latavius is not there. He is a free agent, and Edmonds is going to be a cap casualty. So the question is do you want to re-sign those two? Would you be done? You would re-sign Chase Edmonds on a lower rate, but you would cut and re-sign, and Latavius would just need to be re-signed. So is it going to be necessary to bring in different running backs? Maybe. I think Edmonds is probably going to be gone. I would bring Murray back, and then I would either draft or go with a cheap option. Again, you got good value for Latavius Murray off of someone's practice squad. We got a lot of Falcons fans in here. We saw what Caleb Huntley was able to do off of a practice squad. He was a darn good running back. So they can be had, but yes, you will need a third back.
They might need a second back as well. You talked about Javonte's injury. It would not be shocking at all if Javonte, we didn't see him until the last month of the season next year. And if that, we saw him maybe operating at 70% of what he was. He tore multiple ligaments in his knee. I mean, the cold, harsh reality of it is that he might never be the same running back that we saw previously. So it's really unfortunate with that because Javonte was such a young, promising player. But I think the Broncos have to go into this offseason thinking that we don't have a single running back on this roster going into 2023. So I know that you talked about going cheap at the running back. I think that with the Broncos and Sean Payton in town and how he's already talked about they need to build the run game around him, how much he utilizes the run game and the pass game. I think the Broncos are going to view the running back position more of a premium than people would expect. I think that because of how teams are playing defense right now, I think the running back value has actually jumped a little bit. I mean, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs' contract, what they're projected to get this offseason is similar to what Corey Davis is getting paid out there. I mean, I just think there's an undervalue in running back right now. And I could see the Broncos not only paying one okay money, not incredible money, but okay money, and drafting one with one of their first 3 or 4 picks in their draft as well to solidify the room. If they are paying a running back, I used to be anti-paying running backs no matter what. I think with where the Broncos are at right now, with how Sean Payton likes to utilize the running back, with how Russell Wilson probably needs the running game to even function at a above average level in today's game, that you can pay a running back okay money as long as it's short term. If you give somebody the Melvin Gordon where it's it's a 2-year and the guarantees are only over 2 years, fine. It's when you're paying these running backs 5-year contracts when they are with massive guarantees on their second contract that I get scared. I would not be about that.
That's what a first round draft pick is, though. And I know you're not talking about first round draft pick. Other thought on this, and we'll wrap a little Senior Bowl into here too, is what about that wide receiver who's in a running back's body? We've seen it with Cordero Patterson. Everybody's looking for the Deebo Samuel. The Falcons have it in Cordero. But I saw a guy down at the Senior Bowl that made me just go like this. 6'1", 230 pounds, sticky hands, playing wide receiver. A guy to keep a lookout for is Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. He is that exact body type that we're talking about where you can use him in so many different ways. That X factor receiver, running back slash type of guy. Keep an eye on him. That's you're going to hear a lot of comps with Deebo is the soup du jour, but you can say Cordero Patterson pretty easy. And he's just really, really easy catching the ball. Just where you go out, there's no movement. He just throws a hand out and boom, it just sticks like fly paper to his hands. 6'1", 230, and runs like that, I can find a way to use him.
And I want to add to him real quick. I did go
Mhm.
back after you made him stand out. This was a disappointing year for him. Obviously, you could probably say that Lane Kiffin was disappointed by the quarterbacks there too, considering he brought in, I think, two transfer portal guys to compete with Jackson Dart out there at Ole Miss. I think it was Jackson Dart last season, but Mingo didn't have a great year this year, mainly because I think the quarterback was limited. Mingo in the practices, the reps I went back, he was probably the one guy that I thought was giving Julius Brent's a tough time. Julius Brent's probably comes out of the Senior Bowl as one of the top three cornerbacks out there. Kansas State has like record-breaking arm length. Former Iowa Hawkeye transfer. We don't need to talk about that. But Mingo, with his frame and his physicality, he was one that actually was getting giving Julius Brent a hard time.
Mingo would probably be my first pick of the receivers out of the Senior Bowl.
Interesting. I got a few names I want to ask you about.
Yeah, just for the different things he can do. He can do. There were some good ones there.
Yeah.
Typically, the best wide receivers aren't going to be at the Senior Bowl because they're underclassmen. It's just the way it is. Mingo is a guy that I really like for those reasons, for the different ways you can use him. Jamal Killing's coming. He says, "Good morning, fellas." And Broncos, good morning, Jamal. And Noah 72. And the numbers are starting to ramp up. So I just want to give everybody kind of a programming note again, real quick, is Nick and I do a lot of shows together. We do on different channels. We've brought all of those in together for one reason, because we want to talk Senior Bowl. We want to talk coaches that reaches a broader audience than just Falcons, just Broncos. We want to bring Broncos and Falcons in together, and we want to bring in our Coast to Coast football crowd together as well. And we're both off for a week after tomorrow, so we're not going to be here for a week. So we wanted to make sure we gave you all a full 60, 90 minutes, whatever it takes to come in. So you're going to see some crossover in the chat. We're going to see some different. You can tell by this background that I'm going neutral today. So it's it's not a Falcons broadcast. It's not a Broncos. It's neutral. You can tell by the background. We're always Chelsea, but that's a different story. But Noah comes in. He's got a great question that crosses over between Falcons and Broncos, and basically anybody that needs an offensive tackle, a right tackle specifically. He says, speaking of Falcons and Broncos, any chance the Broncos can steal Caleb McGarry, right tackle? Caleb McGarry ended up the number 4 rated offensive tackle by Pro Football Focus, largely because of his dominance in the run game. His pass game protection was just okay, but he was a dominating pass blocker this year. I mean, run blocker.
Yeah.
Pardon.
Yeah. Run blocker. His scheme protected him. Also, you mentioned PFF graded him high, but PFF also had an article with him being one of the most buyer beware free agents this upcoming season for those reasons you spoke about. I could see him getting good money, still a very good run blocker. I don't know if the Broncos scheme would be the best for him. They obviously want to run the football, but I think the Broncos, and now even with Sean Payton coming to town, they're going to invest in the offensive line, but I think the interior offensive line is going to be more of an emphasis early on than the right tackle spot, just because of how Russell Wilson's stature, how they want to run probably more inside gap scheme stuff. You need to get some guys up front to give yourself some room and punch some dudes in the mouth, more so than the right tackle. I think you can scheme to protect that right tackle a little bit. Now, obviously, the the AFC West, you got Max Crosby, you got Joey Bosa. It's not going to be easy, but I don't think the Broncos are going to go over the top at right tackle. They'll probably look to draft somebody to develop and bring in a swing/borderline starter type this season. I know it's not what anybody wants to hear, but this is the Broncos are limited in terms of their resources. They're probably not going to be able to walk out of this draft with the best right tackle, especially true since they're going to be changing schemes potentially on both sides of the ball.
Another part is he is a perfect fit for Caleb McGarry is a perfect fit for what the Atlanta Falcons want to do, which is run the ball a lot. He was drafted by the Falcons, and they've got a ton of money. They can match any offer. He would want to have to leave, and I'm not sure that he does, because the Falcons, for the first time in years, can't afford to keep him. He will probably command 13 to 15 million on a multi-year deal. I don't think the Broncos are going to want to go that high on their right tackle position. I think I was as tough on him as anybody. I mean, no, I wasn't, because there's morons on Twitter and stuff. But, in this space, I went after him kind of the same way I've gone after Dalton Reisner for the Broncos. He just wasn't good enough. Didn't get his 5th-year option, picked up for a reason. He had a season this year where he's going to get paid. And the Falcons have the money to do it. I would think a 3-year deal, not quite top of the market, but that 13 to 15 range is where I would feel comfortable. Call it 4 years, $60 million with 40 guaranteed. That would end up being a 3-year, $13.5, $14 million deal. I think that's going to make sense. You know what makes sense to me is Gary Palmer coming in yellow, coming in with a super chat. Appreciate you, Gary. He says, morning, guys. Look forward to Broncos for breakfast and Mile High Huddle every time. Want to see what Sean Payton does with the O-line. We'll miss you guys this week. Yeah, we'll miss you too, Gary. I don't know that I've missed more than one show in a row for 2 years on Mile High Huddle. So I'll miss you guys too. I'll probably have my laptop and check in depending on what we're doing at night. But yeah, so am I. And I've said the Denver Broncos need to bring in 5 or 6 new bodies on the offensive line for camp and let them battle it out. And they probably will. When you start looking at who is a free agent and, does Dalton Reisner come back? Is Lloyd Cushenberry back? And if so, for how long? Graham Glasgow is going to get cut. Does he get re-signed at a lower rate or restructured is, I guess, what we want to say. We don't know. So there's going to be a lot of new bodies, a lot of new faces, and there will definitely be, we know this for a fact already, a new offensive line coach. Scheme, tempo of the play calling, the balance of the offense should all help the offensive line in Denver, which was a travesty this past season.
Yeah, and the Broncos, so PFF put out their top 100 pending free agents list. Broncos have 2 offensive linemen from their previous class on that top 100 list. You had Dalton Reisner coming in, I think, at 47. And also at 81, you had Cam Fleming, who they said played like an excellent backup, potential starting caliber right tackle to swing tackle. Somebody's going to get a good value signing him this offseason. I'm a big Cam Fleming. I think he gets he's going up in one-on-one reps against Max Crosby, Joey Bosa. He's going to lose some. That's just, you're paying him to be a guy who will lose.
He was 1.2 million. So I look at him, for Falcons fans, I look at him like I did Eli Wilkinson at left guard. Was he the best left guard in the league? No. Was he a gigantic improvement over Jalen Mayfield the year before at $1.2 million? Yes. He was solid, and he was dirt cheap. He absolutely outplayed his contract. Do you want to still try and upgrade? He's a free agent too, though.
Yep.
Do you want to try and upgrade there? Now, Spot Rack has the market value for Dalton Reisner in the 8 figures, like $10 to $11 million. I would offer him 3, maybe. If buyer beware. If he's a free agent and your team signs him to a multi-year deal and it's got 8 to 12 on it, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't care who he signs with. Buyer beware. That's a tough deal. He has I've covered the Broncos for 2 years. He's been a liability at left guard for the 2 years I've been watching.
He's a fine pass protector, in my opinion, but he gets hardly any push in the run game. Thought it was better down the stretch with him, but we'll see what happens. I think the Broncos are going to overturn that room regardless. Could be draft, could be free agency, but that'll be live. I would be shocked if left guard isn't a new face next season. Center probably also a new face. Right tackle, hopefully a rookie competing with a swing tackle just for what the market is. But we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, you have Sean Payton in here. He's really emphasized, like I mentioned earlier, the offensive line. They drafted Ryan Ramczyk in the first round. They drafted Eric McCoy, I believe, was in the first round. They drafted Cesar Ruiz in the first round in his tenure. They drafted Andreas Pete in the first round in his tenure. They drafted and paid big money for, I think his name was Carl Nix, guard from, it was Oklahoma or Georgia, I think. I always get him and Ben Grubbs, I think was the other name mixed up. They're in the same draft.
Georgia. Yeah,
so it must have been Oklahoma.
Yeah, he was a Georgia boy, if I'm thinking of the right guy. Now
they're in the same draft.
There was a big country boy I watched, repping 150s dumbbells in each hand on incline press, and he was just a beast. Was okay. He came out 2 years ago and he was always hurt. He was at the Senior Bowl the last year or the year before. Maybe I'm kidding. They're all starting to run together. Just a little bit. CIA coming in, and I think this is a good transition. We're right at about 30 minutes, right at 9:30 Eastern time. And I think it's a good time where we can start talking some of the Senior Bowl folks. And if you're coming in, we've got my Falcons channel, my regular channel, we've got Broncos, we've got my neutral channel in here. We've got everybody in here in large part because we want to talk Senior Bowl to a larger audience, and because Nick and I will be gone starting tomorrow for the rest of the week. So we're both taking a week off.
I'll be here tomorrow.
Vacation I think I've taken since 2016. We'll see how much of a vacation I actually take. With a laptop and a cell phone, you're never actually gone, but I'll play during the day.
Yeah.
I'll play during the day. That's for sure. CIA, I'll come right back to you. I want to grab the super chat real quick from Noah. Noah comes in with a blue super. He says, when is Sean Payton's press conference scheduled? I think it's 11 a.m. Mountain Time, if I'm not mistaken. So 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Mountain. I think that is right. Kathy, we're going to use this and CIA to talk about any interesting interior line in this draft for us, what kind of scheme is going to run. We're going to start hitting on some of the players right now. Nick, I've probably watched the linemen the most closely, or we can start with the Senior Bowl MVP and Jake Haener, the next Brock Purdy. Is going to be the tagline. In fact, I'm going to play it up, and I already cut his highlights up this morning from the Senior Bowl practices, and I'm going to go ahead and just put that in the title. The next Brock Purdy. I'm going to quote Jim Nagy. He's saying, if you are looking for possibly the next Brock Purdy, this could be the guy.
How many qualifiers can you put on that?
6 foot tall. I tell you what, watching all of the team drills for both teams, he moved the ball the best during teams, and then he ended up being the Senior Bowl MVP.
Yeah, he's fine. He's small in stature, not great arm talent, but he puts the ball where he wants it to go most of the time, and I think he protects the ball and is pretty smart with it. If you're looking for a backup who can distribute and give you a steady hand, I think that Haener's a great guy. His game, not last season, but the 2021 season, where he led Fresno State in a comeback against UCLA, was one of the most fun games I watched over the last 2 years. He was balling in that game. Sounds like a really intelligent, hardworking player as well. He's just pretty limited in terms of the tool. I don't think he's got the athleticism, the ability to tuck and run and create like Brock Purdy had. Brock Purdy, played a little bit of the slotted arm talent kind of stuff, baseball stuff. I think Haener's a little bit less athletic, a little bit less flexible in what he can do. But I think he's like, if you have Brett Rippon as a D, Jake Haener's a C+ version of what Brett Rippon is. So I think that he'll get drafted somewhere round 4 through 6 would be my assumption. Maybe I can't imagine it being earlier, but this is like the quarterback room falls off an absolute cliff after the first 4 guys in this year, especially with Hendon Hooker being hurt. So we'll see. Thanks to the NIL with all these guys coming back, a lot of the ones who would have been drafted day 2 are going back to college, but we'll see what happens with him. He's interesting. He deserved the Super Bowl MVP. I just have such a hard time with quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl. You don't get much information on the quarterback position for what they do. You can kind of see some of the stuff, but it's not really, it doesn't translate like the offensive line reps, like the defensive line reps, like the cornerback reps, like the wide receiver reps. That's where you're gathering the most information in the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, you're looking at arm talent. After that, it's just play, and the play stacks up pretty well for him at Fresno State. 20 touchdowns against 3 interceptions last year. He only played 10 games, so I think he must have been hurt a little bit because he had like 4,500 yards the year before. 72% completion rate. So when he was in there, you mentioned very careful with the ball, very accurate. All good things. Good mobility, throws on the run well. So again, I think he's got a pretty good chance to go as well. Max Duggan did some good things. He had maybe the best throw I saw while I was there. The TCU quarterback, he had a throw where the left end was coming around right tackle on the outside, and Max Duggan kind of slid to the right and sidearmed that thing, like throwing it around the corner like a slider into the corner on an out route into the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. I was like, that was gorgeous. So very impressed there. I haven't put his tape together yet, so I haven't watched him with a microscope like I've watched some of these other guys. My Senior Bowl stuff is a 2 or 3 week long process, and that week is going to be shortened because I'm going to be gone for this next week. So I'm not on it as much as I will be as we go into second half of February and March. But we'll be there. We'll be there. Draft's not for another 3 months. 3 months, but wanted to Tim Durst says, is he related to Hacksaw Jim Duggan? I don't think so. I don't think so.
He's from Iowa. Max Duggan is. He tore his ACL, I think, his junior or senior of high school, and his dad used to coach football in Texas and ends up going to Texas Christian. So Heisman runner-up. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, but he'll get drafted by somebody and have a shot to be, round 2 or a number 2 or a number 3 quarterback. So we'll see. It's a really poor quarterback class this year outside the top guys. It was probably one of the lesser groups of the Senior Bowl we've had in a while. Blame the extra year because of Rona, blame NIL with guys going back. Luckily, I think down the line is good things for the Senior Bowl because these guys are going to be older. A lot of guys are going to be coming back. The underclassmen aren't going to be jumping as much because they can actually get some money in the league, in NCAA football. But this is going to be a lean year as far as the underclassmen and talent. And we're already seeing it, picks 25 through 50 are guys that typically you see go 50 to 80. And the guys 50 to 80 are the ones you typically see early round 4. Like that's just seems to be how it's stacking up this year. There's still going to be good players. There always are. But just overall the talent level. And I'm having a hard time with it too. Talking about the offensive line. I'm like, okay, working on a post-Peyton, Sean Payton trade mock. I really want to go offensive tackle with what pick? What is it? 80 or 81? 69 or 70. Excuse me. Those are the picks because 60 or 68 and 69. But who's going to be there round 3 for the offensive tackle? Because I feel like, I'm interested in Matthew Bergeron. I think he's going to go mid round 2 to end of round 2. Jalen Duncan, he was not great on tape this year, but he stood out really well at the Senior Bowl.
He was good. He was maybe because DeJuan Jones, right tackle, Ohio State, left after day 1.
No.
Jalen Duncan might have been the best offensive tackle at the Senior Bowl. And I don't even think it's a might. He was the best offensive tackle at the Senior Bowl.
It's interesting you say that.
Really good. And he flopped over and played right tackle too. He's got the athleticism where he can go, and the skill and the mentality where he can do both. He's a little light, maybe 295. Okay. With that frame, I can put 20 pounds on him, 10 pounds on him pretty easily. Clinton Watson coming in with super. He says, big love to the whole congregation, MHH crew. Let's have a great week. And Chris Walker checking in over on Atlanta Falcons fans. Appreciate you being here on Facebook as well. Joe Cannon, Falcons fan, he comes in. He has a question about a guy near and dear to the heart of an Iowa Hawkeye that's over here sitting next to me. He says, I've been looking more into Lucas Van Ness. Do you think he would be a good fit for what the Falcons need?
Lucas Van Ness, massive, incredible power. If you're going to be running twists and stunts out there, he's probably one of the best in this draft class. He has a chance to go, I think, as high as 8 this year, especially given the drop-off probably after the first. There's a drop-off after the first 5, and there's a kind of a drop-off again after the first 7, 8. So he definitely could be up there if we want to see what he tests like. He's probably a guy who's you're working still. He's developmental early on, which is not what you want. But again, we'll add the caveat of this draft class and the position he plays. You're going to have a role and value from him early on, regardless, because defensive line is such a rotational position. He's got a little bit of inside-outside ability. He played some 3-tech at Iowa, was able just to eat up guards in pass situations at 3-tech. Can play on the outside too, twist and stunt game. Heavy hands, really long. He's going to be a fun player. He's because of his playing on the interior, specifically his redshirt freshman year, he has at least had to have in his mind rushing with discipline and also playing with leverage. Being, a 6'7" player, rushing on the interior, leverage is always going to be a disadvantage for you, especially with his kind of more narrower edge rusher build. So at least he has that. He's been working on those skills to play through that kind of contact, rush through players and keep leverage. But very fun player, very interesting player. If he tests as well as Summer's talking about, I think there's going to be a discussion between him and Miles Murphy from Clemson as well. I think that's kind of the tier. Given what I've heard,
Tyree Wilson fit in there?
I think Tyree Wilson's going to go a little bit before, just because of the length that he possesses is rare, a rare trait. And he also has, I think, a much more production on tape than Van Ness and Miles Murphy. But I think after that, Van Ness / Miles Murphy, that's going to be a debate for the Falcons at 8.
And Joe, yes, he fits into what the Falcons need. They need size on the edge. They need somebody that can set the edge, and they need someone who can have the quickness to go still get the quarterback by themselves. They don't have that guy outside of Grady Jarrett, and Grady Jarrett is best as a defensive tackle. He can play that 3-4 end and do that. Taquan Graham is solid in the middle. But for me, when you look at the personnel, like, we've been playing a 3-4. Yeah, but you don't really have a great 3-4 edge, on either side. Lorenzo Carter, maybe. Kind of a journeyman. Ebiketie, could he fit as a 4-3 Sam or Will linebacker who can then blitz too? Drop into coverage a little bit? Maybe. But you don't have a guy with any size out there on the edge that can really set the edge and get after and then rush the passer at the same time. Yes, he fits exactly what you need. Is he going to be that guy, 3 downs, a 3-down guy right away? Maybe, maybe not. But this entire draft is full of buts. So someone asked me yesterday, he's like, who are the top guys in this draft who's got a chance to go number 1? I named 5 guys. And he knew most of those guys. And he was like, but Bryce Young's tiny. I'm like, every single one of these guys is a yeah, but every one of them.
Well,
And that's where the draft is, Nick.
maybe not Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, but
Well,
you're
230 pounds of Will Anderson. Yeah, but he's 230.
We'll see
That's
what he
it's
makes.
a
Yeah,
question. Yeah, but he's a 3 tech. Do you really want to take him number 1 overall? Yeah, but CJ Stroud. For me, CJ Stroud is as sure a thing as any of them when it comes to the tools and the talent and the frame and all that type of thing. What's the big yeah but with CJ Stroud? Production? Not for me.
The style of offense is really simple for Ohio State. He's throwing to multiple first rounders out there. And also the fact that he had the athleticism, but had not really shown to use it. Not great athleticism, but the ability to be a playmaker. He really just wanted to be drop back passer, survey the field, and make his read. Where in today's NFL, you have to have a little bit of playmaking ability. He showed it in Georgia. That's going to be enough for some teams to be like, okay, he showed it once, he can do it again. For some teams, it's going to be like, WTF. You always had this in your ability. Why did you not use it? Because it totally changes how you can play football. I mean, God bless CJ Stroud, because the best game of his entire career by a big margin was that Georgia game. And that's what a lot of people are going to take away from him, from his college career. That was not his game at Ohio State, though.
Rise to the occasion, but he was being talked about after his sophomore season as being possibly number 1 overall, and again, the longer the spotlight goes on these guys, everybody wants to talk. We'll see if Caleb Wilson and Drake May can do it for a full year or two, because everybody was talking about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud the same way a year ago. And Will Anderson, he'd be number 1, he'd be ahead of a lot of these guys, and then the shine comes off just a little bit under the spotlight. Kind of works opposite that way. You don't shine under the spotlight. Chris Walker saying, good morning, Chris. Appreciate you coming in over on All Falcons. Aussie Wombat says, was Joe Milton quarterback there? I don't believe so.
He's back at Tennessee. He's going to be the starting quarterback probably at Tennessee this season. He's got a cannon of an arm, fun quarterback, pretty highly rated. Went to Michigan and then transferred to Tennessee and then was beaten out by Hendon Hooker out there at Tennessee. So Joe Milton should be the starting quarterback at Tennessee this season, barring him struggling.
And Hendon Hooker was there interviewing with all the teams and being there with his teammates and stuff. So he was there, but he did not throw, not back from injury completely yet. Bama X saying good morning. Happy Monday, Broncos country. Michaela Israel coming in as well. Benjamin Flores coming in. We started a little early, the Broncos channel a little early. So some of our late arriving Broncos crew coming in. And again, if you're just joining us, we are simulcasting to Falcons channels, to my regular Facebook page, to my regular YouTube page. So we're reaching a very diverse audience here as well. Chris Walker asked, and this we hit on some of this a little bit with Ejiro Evero and what the Broncos might do, and that Nielsen was hired. He says, but the Falcons also hired Ryan Nielsen from the Saints. So do you think the Falcons stick with a 3-4 or go back to a 4-3? They were in a 4-man front a lot last year. Nick could probably look up the analytics for me and say how often it was, but I remember seeing Grady Jarrett where he belonged a lot, which is 3-tech, right between the guard and the center. That's where he just wreaks havoc. And because the Falcons didn't have the personnel to run a 3-4 or a 5-2, however you want to say it, a base nickel, they weren't great. So they were in a 4-man front a lot. I kind of get the feeling it'll be a base 4, Nick, or even so, it'll be 3 with 1 walk-up, maybe that big walk-up edge, and you got 3 linebackers. But I feel like it's going to be more of a 4-3, even if you're just moving guys around, depending on how they line up. But again, I think it's super multiple, Chris. They're lining up so many different ways. I wouldn't ever say it's a base anything.
Yeah, it's going to be base nickel. So 4-2-5, a lot of 4-2-5 look out there. You'll see that Falcons are going to have to probably bring in some more versatility at the safety position, given what we've seen Dennis Allen do out there, using especially that big slot safety position. I mean, the guy, they traded him this season, but he was big for them in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had been a good player for them in that kind of role. Swiss Army knife, being able to come down and play the slot. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think the big edges is another part here. The Saints really wanted some mass and length up front, so that way they made things easier on the back end where they could play through their rushes, keep kind of more pocket crunching type of stuff up front. And that's not what the Falcons have right now by any means, especially because you're bringing over Nelson as the defensive line coach from the Saints. So I think that's going to be a big point of emphasis out there, but more of a 4-3 defense. Going to see some cover 1 looks out there. Going to see some, I think, cover 3 also, but that's what I would expect up front. Is a big emphasis on the defensive line will be the biggest change because the body types have to change.
And let's kind of pivot back to the offensive line at the Senior Bowl. I think that's where you're going to get your most value for guys
Yep.
in the trenches, just because they take longer to develop and they end up being seniors. Skill players are born. When we look at the quick twitch, the fast guys at the top of the draft, most of them don't make it to their 4th and 5th years. Their third year guys are at worst redshirt juniors, so they're not eligible, but you can find a lot of good players in the trenches at the Senior Bowl. Starting at offensive tackle, and I'll tell you what, Nick, my gut reaction to this was everybody coming in saying the edge class is super deep. The edge class is super deep. And the offensive line, meh. If that's the case, the offensive line stood up. They handled their business just fine against this deep edge class. Now, I don't know who all was there, who all was missing. That's a different case. But as far as Senior Bowl offensive linemen against some of these edge guys, the Senior Bowl offensive linemen held their own. DeJuan Jones, Ohio State, right tackle, was there first day. He stole the show. 6'8", 375 pounds, wingspan almost 90 inches. For those of you counting at home, that's 7.5 feet.
Could you say coast to coast?
Basketball player, coast to coast Jones.
Yeah.
Basketball player who can move without a doubt. And I don't know if he just dropped the mic and left or what, but he's like, I've shown enough. But he did. I would have liked to have seen him go for a little bit more than one day because I had fun watching him, Nick.
Yeah, and what's a little bit frustrating going back on him is the area that he lost in college that I had concerns about, that he didn't get tested once doing it. So DeJuan Jones, massive length. People were trying to beat him up the arc outside, and guess what? Easy for him. His issue is redirecting. If you can counter across his face, then he has some problems out there. Nobody did it once. So I didn't think it was the most talented edge group there. That's another position, Scott. You talked about wide receivers and cornerbacks being a young man's position. Edge rusher as well. Typically, the guys who have the tools come out early, so you don't really see them at the Senior Bowl as much. But nobody being across his face. He had a one and done, and he said, "You know what? I'm out." Jalen Duncan also said, "Peace out. I'm not playing in the Senior Bowl game. I've shown enough." So there was a pretty good offensive line week.
I didn't watch the game. I watched, 4 hours a day times 3, 12 hours of practice multiple times. I didn't watch the game.
Yeah,
Jalen Duncan, was across the week, was the best offensive tackle there. Maryland offensive tackle. He came in at, and then we're going to say hello to Deanna. Hold tight for a second, Deanna. Jalen Duncan, number 71. I'm on the wrong team.
Probably
71.
American.
He came in at 6'5.5", 298 pounds, 33.5-inch arms with an 80.5-inch wingspan. So not huge measurables. If we put up his RAS, he'll come in about average on those. I have a feeling his shuttle and his L-cone are going to be really good. He had tremendous feet. Nobody beat him laterally, inside or outside, which we got to see across 3 days.
And I was a little bit surprised that he didn't win the offensive lineman of the week down there in practice. That actually ends up going to Darnell Wright from Tennessee, who I think got better each game. I think early on in the week, he was trying to show like, I'm this tough, mean offensive lineman, and it was getting him in bad positions because he was being overly aggressive, specifically in his pass sets, versus pass sets. They're controlled violence. It's controlled aggression where if you're out over your skis trying to dictate sometimes, especially when you're offensive lineman, let them dictate at first and then react to them, especially if you're that strong and lengthy as Darnell Wright was. Thought he had a good week as well. But yeah, you mentioned it. Jalen Duncan had an awesome one. And it's also awesome. Deanna coming in on my birthday, $50. Thank you. I'm going to consider this a birthday present. Saying good morning, Scott and Nick, listening while I get ready for work. Who's your favorite offensive line player? I'm not sure about Flores Denver. What do you think? Hashtag Broncos for breakfast. I really like my favorite offensive lineman in this class. It would be Paris Johnson Jr. As far as where the Broncos are picking, I'd be really happy if Darnell Wright, Matthew Bergeron, or Jalen Duncan were there for the Broncos in the third round. We'll see if any of those guys make it. Who knows? As far as Flores to Denver, it'd be a massive scheme change for the Broncos. I'm not really a big fan of the all-out blitzing cover zero types of defenses because they're more, while they are, more fun and everybody likes to be aggressive, I am anti big play all the time. If it's possible for the Broncos, make teams have to work the ball down the field 10, 12 plays rather than letting them get 80 yards in one play, especially Scott. This is kind of a interesting one. Patrick Mahomes, number one quarterback all time against the blitz in EPA per play ever to play the game of football. Number two is Peyton Manning. So we saw Patrick Mahomes have some up and down this season against the Broncos blitzes. Granted, they like to use a little bit more confusion on the back end than the straight up blitzes, where you have Flores using double mug linebackers and stuff like that. But would be interesting to see what he does there. And we'll see how the offensive line continues to play out. Also, want to get Kathy real quick. Nick, do you still think Darnell Wright is a guard? I think he can play tackle. I think he'd be an incredible guard. I think you're talking about a good, solid right tackle versus a potential Pro Bowl level guard out there. So he's a darn good. He's a good player. I think probably best at guard, but there's so few tackles that if you can play tackle first, you should.
Dan, I want to come back to this. It says, who's your favorite offensive line player? I like to try and bring up, and I don't think everybody's talking about him. I don't follow what everybody else says. So maybe they are, but I don't think so from what I hear. But the guy who got my attention over and over and over again at the Senior Bowl was North Carolina's Asim Richards. And I saw him take reps at tackle. I saw him take reps mostly at guard. But then on the last day, I heard him yelling, the Sands, if you want to try a different position, now's your chance. And I saw him going to left tackle, win his reps. He was rarely beaten with power, with speed. And you'll look at his build, Nick, you'll like this one, 6'4", 307. Okay. Not huge, but compact, light on his feet, moved really well. 34 and an eighth inch arms on a 6'4" frame with a wingspan of 83 and a quarter. Got a 7-foot wingspan. I'm like, okay, the arm length on this, that makes sense while he's able to get out there and go with 10-inch hands. So, he's palming a basketball. Good grip strength, great feet. I'm sure as I go through, I'll find some times where he was beaten, but he was really, really good. Keep an eye on Asim Richards, North Carolina guard. That's a guy who can come in when we talk about, you've heard me say it, Deanna, a bunch of times, you can fix your interior alignment. It's cheap. It's cheaper, relatively speaking. I can go third, fourth, fifth round. If he's around in the third round, fourth round, fifth round, right now, he's on my list for sure. And thank you so much for helping us out, coming in with that red hot, that hot pink super chat.
I'll have to check him out. Obviously, versatility is key. There's a offensive lineman from Utah who has 5-position ability that's high on my list just because of that overall movement skills across the line. If you're going to be anything on the offensive line, especially if you're not a lottery pick, then you need to be versatile. One of the reasons that Broncos country cried foul this year with Calvin Anderson not playing. Well, Calvin Anderson was only a left tackle and only a backup level left tackle. And that's not good enough if you're the eighth.
Which is code for he's just not good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a good left tackle either.
Yep. No. Albert Knoppers, what do you think about Lauren Landau being gone? I think woohoo and hoping we get better coach for health and strength area. You've heard me say it before on here. I know that a lot of people like to dump on Landau. I'm not a kinesiologist. I'm not a strength and conditioning expert. I don't have all the details here. It's even less so. We have less to judge on the specifics of this than we do what the Broncos do personnel-wise, what they do on the field, what they do scheme-wise. So if the Broncos are moving on from him, hoping for better results. Obviously, the results for the Broncos haven't been good. It's one of the first things I said when the Broncos brought on the new ownership. They need to invest heavily in areas where there is not a salary cap, coaching, facilities, strength conditioning, nutrition, and this is hopefully one where they're going to get into that. Also, I think this is probably empowering Sean Payton. The strength and conditioning coach that he had for the Saints walked away when he left the Saints as well and is available. I would be shocked if he wasn't the guy coming with Sean Payton getting his team together.
Yeah, Landau was off limits, I guess, for a lot of the time. And this year, towards the back half of the season, we started hearing questions being asked by local media. That's a good sign that people are being told to start asking about this because a change is coming. Albert, you watch me enough. You heard me say it before. It was coming. The strength and conditioning staff was going to be changed in Denver, and it didn't take long. It happened before that Sean Payton has even been officially announced. Kathy comes in and she asks, let me see where I can find it again. It was right here. It was about the guy I'm going to say his name wrong a zillion times because his names are backwards. It's McClendon Curtis. That is his name, and I'll call him Curtis McClendon 10 times before this is all done. He is out of UTC, University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. She asked, is he an offensive tackle or an interior offensive lineman? Interior. He's a guard all the way. I didn't realize he was, until you asked that, I was like, why would she say tackle? I'm like, well, hell, he's almost 6'6". I had no idea he was that tall. He plays very compact. He's got good flexibility. But he's 330 pounds, and I didn't see the movement, the lateral movement you're going to need at tackle. And at this stage, and if he was a tackle at UTC, I'm not surprised. I didn't see the strength at the point of the attack against the big boys up front that he's going to need at guard. But if he's been playing tackle, I'm not surprised because he's just not used to that yet. But he's got the frame, he's got the size. I think he can be a good interior lineman. It just may take a little bit longer, so that might push him down a little bit farther than some of these other guys. But I did like what I saw about him. I'm an underdog guy for sure. So when I see Cody Mock out there, when I see McClendon Curtis, let's see who else was out there that was from a smaller group. On the other side, Old Dominion, Nick Saldivari. I'm keeping an eye on those guys to see how they hold up. And McClendon Curtis held his own. But for the smaller school guys this year, Cody Mack didn't just hold his own. He was good. He was really good. And Nick, I guess he played tackle too, but he was straight IOL also. He was guard center at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. A few more names we talked almost all offensive line so far, which I don't have any issue with because I really enjoy talking offensive line. I want to give you the floor for Emir, Emil, yes, from Alabama, played guard there at Alabama for most of his career, but got some center reps in this game. And Emil Ekiyor Jr. Could end up being one of the bigger risers coming out of the Senior Bowl, given his versatility and how good he looked at center.
Emil was straight center. He played center the whole time, maybe not the whole time, but because again, they moved around a little bit. But every time I saw him, for the most part, he was there as a center. 6'2" and a quarter, 317 pounds, 33.5-inch arms with an 82 and eighth wingspan. That's just nuts. This guy's an inch taller than me. My arms are the same length as my height. I've got a 73-inch wingspan. I'm 6'1". He's got almost a foot longer wingspan than I do with the same height. That's just crazy. When we talk about flexibility, I mean, he could sit on he'd get down in a center position as he's looking around ready to make his checks, make his reads, make his calls. He's sitting on his heels. I mean, he's so flexible. He got so low. And the flexibility he has, when we talk about low man wins from the center position, nobody's getting lower than this guy. I thought he was really good at center. And then the thing is, on the other team, 55, oh God, his name, Oluwatimi out of Michigan, wasn't bad either. He wasn't bad either. He was 6'2" and 5'8", 308 pounds. If I had my pick between those two, I would have gone Emil Ekiyor from Alabama. A little bit better push, a little bit better lateral mobility. But yeah, as a center, yes, please. I thought he was really good too. Again, you go here thinking I'm not so sure about the interior line, and then you watch them. They were pretty good, Nick. I can find some guys that can help your team coming out of the interior line from here. Yeah.
No, that's definitely a spot. August coming in saying Elway with drinking problems. Guess you're not in the know of rumors since he's playing days. Elway reportedly likes the brown, but we'll skip past that for now. This American team, man, there's so many offensive linemen that are worth talking about that we haven't even mentioned yet. Wanya Morris from Oklahoma, former 5-star guy, right tackle. He was okay this week, but he definitely has the tools. I could see him being an early day 3 pick, maybe a late day 2. We mentioned Matthew Bergeron earlier, but really some of the guys who stole the show we haven't talked about yet on the interior. You mentioned it. Probably the earliest drafted offensive lineman out of this group is going to be Osiris Torrance from Florida. He's one that I know that you were impressed with his movements. I think he's still probably best in a pure gap kind of scheme, but saw enough in pass protection in the reps that I saw that I'm like, okay, you can live with this, especially if you protect him on the right tackle side. Don't give him too much space to deal with. John Michael Schmitz had an incredible week, and somebody we haven't talked about on here at all, that was an all-pro guard this year that maybe played himself into the top 50. Steve Avila from TCU had people I talked with said that he had an excellent week as well. And from what I watched, Steve Avila had a very good week.
Steve Avila was okay for me. He the thing is he was there. I think it was Mike Ken, longtime Atlanta Falcon, got like the nickname the Professor. He said trying to pass this guy was like trying to rush against like an encyclopedia. He knew everything. For me, as I'm watching it, I'm writing down numbers and remembering the guys, and I'm watching these guys, and I could never remember 79's name because he wasn't doing anything that was memorable, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as an offensive lineman. He wasn't getting beaten like a drum. He wasn't driving guys through he was just steady. He was steady. So for me, he was okay. He didn't necessarily stand out, but he didn't stand out negatively either, which isn't, like I said, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You mentioned John Michael Schmitz. John Michael Schmitz was really, really good. If I said Emil was my top center, I forgot Schmitz. Two different teams. John Michael Schmitz, no, he was on Minnesota, and Emil was, they were on the same team. Alabama and Minnesota on the same team. That's a little odd. So John Michael Schmitz at center and Emil Ejiro at center. Pretty good advantage for the American team going out there on the offensive line. John Michael Schmitz came in, Minnesota center. He came in at 6'3" and 3/8, 306, 32 and 3/4 inch arms with a 78-inch wingspan. So not quite as long arms as or reach as Emil, despite being just an inch taller. But he was really, really good. I can see him going. If Curtis Strange can go at the back end of the first round, John Michael Schmitz can go in the first round for sure. And Linderbaum, I didn't see Linderbaum as much, but if you can take a center in the first round, I can take John Michael Schmitz in the first round. He was really good.
Yeah, not the athlete that a guy like Tyler Linderbaum was, who could have tested as a tight end and had good testing numbers, or there was some pretty incredible movement skills. I also don't think he's the same caliber mover as Cam Jurgens last year coming out of Nebraska, who was taken middle of the second round. But given where this class is at this year, if somebody wants a really good run blocker with some guard center versatility, I could see them taking him in the back end of the first round. I probably would be more comfortable with him in the 32 to 50 range. But again, we keep talking about this class. Somebody's got to be picked in picks 15 to 32. So it's not like, oh, this is a mid-day 2 grade, but he's still got to be picked there. So is what it is. I want to move forward here, Scott. We're moving on the offensive side of the ball still. We talked a little bit about Mingo out of Ole Miss. A few names I want to get your opinion on from what I've watched and where the Senior Bowl buzz is. Somebody who maybe had some of the most buzz coming out of this from the wide receiver group has been Tank Dell out of Houston, a little jitterbug guy. Last year we saw Wan'Dale Robinson from Nebraska, from Kentucky, come out and get drafted early to mid-second round. Tank Dell, I mean, he looked twitchy. I know this is an event that is for him because there's nothing but green grass all around you to operate in. But he looked explosive, twitchy, and somebody who could be taken day 2 and add a jitterbug, versatile slot player in today's NFL.
And that's where you are. If you're looking for that slot guy that you want to get into space, reverses, bubble screens, just get him the ball. Punt returns. Tank was that guy. He his ability to get separation with one move was really good. It's like everybody loves the TikTok routes, the double move, the woo, and I'm like, I just roll my eyes. I'm like, when we ran combines, we didn't even allow double moves. I'm like, you got no safety, you got no pass rush, you got no linebackers, you got no nothing, and you're expecting a guy to cover 55 yards, 30 yards from side to side down the middle of the field on a double move. Come on, that wasn't Tank. Tank could make one move and create good separation. 163 pounds. So he is on the smaller side, but he is a guy that knows how to work the space, get open, sure hands. And he's not just quick. He's got some acceleration after he's caught the ball to then take the ball as well. You probably know a little bit more about this guy, but one of the best receivers there was Iowa State's Xavier Hutchinson. Watching him, he came in at just a tick under 6'2", 207 pounds. And every time I'm looking up, it's number 4. Every time I was looking at a big catch, it was either a tight end, Nick, or it was number 4. And he was really good with contested catches. He was really good getting separation on the outside. So he was that big, strong, body control wide receiver that I love. And Xavier Hutchinson, I thought, really helped himself down at the Senior Bowl.
He was really good at Iowa State this year. Probably the only thing on that offense that went right for them. The offense is very much, is that guy open? No? Okay, we're going to toss it up to him anyway. He had some critical drops this year, but I think that was partially because of volume. With how much he was getting targeted, there were going to be some drops out there. Really good player. Probably somebody who I think probably goes early day 3. I don't think he's really got incredible explosiveness or twitch or suddenness to him, but you mentioned it. Really good body control, ability to throw it up and make some acrobatic catches.
Mm-hmm.
So a fun player out there. Somebody who wants like a wide receiver 4 kind of guy who can do a little bit. I think some inside outside stuff as well out there, just because he's not sudden, but he's smooth, if that makes sense. So interesting player out there. Iowa State had a pretty good showing. They might have had the best edge rusher out there in Mobile as well, as much as that hurts me to say in that one. He had a pretty darn Will McDonald all of a sudden getting back into the first round hype with that 35-inch arm length and disposal of moves that he has. But a few more wide receivers here I want to get into, Scott. Some names that I've heard some from. I want to hear if you had any thoughts on this. Dontavian Wicks from Virginia. He had some top 50 hype coming into this season, had a struggling year within the entire Virginia offense. He's a big guy down the field. I know he had some drop
I don't
issues.
think he was there.
Dontavian Wicks from...
Oh, there he is, number 1. I don't remember seeing him.
Okay. Well, that's
number 1. I'll check again. He was on the American team. He probably was. I haven't watched my 7-on-7 on the 2 days of practice. The last 2 days of practice where I really,
probably
so I don't know
you
the
had your
skill
eyes
guys
on
that really jumped out like Tank, and I was keeping an eye on Andre Yosevas for Princeton just to see, the track hype and stuff. And then Mingo was just doing so much you couldn't miss him. And Xavier. So he didn't jump out at me. He didn't jump out at me on first viewing the way those other guys did.
Well, the most interesting wide receivers for me mostly were on the national team, which is crazy to say considering the SEC versus non-SEC rosters for the most part.
Yeah, but those SEC guys are coming out early.
That's true. That's true. 2 guys who really stood out on the national team. I'm curious your thoughts on them. One of them being Michigan State's Jaden Reed, a little bit smaller, twitchy, down the field guy, explosive. I think he was the Big Ten's Special Teams Player of the Year in the 2021 season as a kick returner, ability to get off press for that smaller frame. If you're looking for a little bit of verticality as well, I think he brings that. A lot of hype coming out of the Senior Bowl from that former Michigan State wide receiver, Jaden Reed.
And Deanna Henry coming in wishing you a happy birthday, Nick. Have a blessed day. So thank you, Deanna. You might be on your way out to work, so you have a blessed day as well. All the way out in Alaska. She gets up early with us in the morning. So thank you for coming in hot pink with your super chat. We love you for it, for sure. We love you being here and all the support you show us on Twitter and social media and the sharing and everything. It's a huge help to what we try and do pretty much every day, Nick. Jaden Reed, I'll have plenty to put up of him because he was making lots of good catches. He was a guy who definitely stood out. Michael Wilson, Stanford,
that's the other one.
Here and there, did some stuff. So 4s on both teams. I'm seeing numbers until I'm putting names to them. Michael Wilson was pretty good. Nebraska, okay. Ronnie Bell was kind of hit and miss. Number 8, Michigan. He came in at 5'11". So that big receiver was kind of missing. There was no Christian Watson there this year for sure. He wasn't that 6'3" and change guy who's running away from guys, that fluid, tall. I was kind of hoping that Andre was going to be that guy from Princeton. He might have all the athleticism. He's got good hands and natural catching ability, but he doesn't know how to get separation from Power 5 corners yet.
Yeah.
That'll have to come. And that'll push him down the list a little bit. Number 17, Brigham Young, Puka Nakua. I'm butchering his name.
Yeah.
He was the only guy catching the ball on the first day. That was getting open and getting routes. So he was definitely someone to watch too. And then Nick, the tight ends were the story, catching the ball for a lot of the week.
Yeah. Good week. The names that really stand out here could be back end of the first round talent and Luke Musgraves. Apparently he clocked 20 miles an hour or something out there for the tight end, which is unbelievable for a 6'5", 255-pound tight end. He's somebody that I wouldn't be shocked at all if he was the first tight end taken in this class. I think there are 3 that could end up going in the first round. We saw that last in 2018, I want to say. maybe 2017. The draft with David Njoku, Evan Ingram, and OJ Howard. But that's just possible this year with Darnell Wright, Michael Mayer, and Luke Musgraves. Musgrave had some injuries at Oregon State. Former really good athlete in not a championship, but a high-level downhill skier coming out, and also the son of longtime NFL offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave. Some folks at home might recognize that name. Was injured at Oregon this year, but a really good athlete for his size, still working and developing as a blocker. Probably the best athlete of the top 3 tight ends in this class. We'll see what happens with him, but he was really good. Also in the Senior Bowl, shout out to him. His run blocking and pass blocking were really good, which I know that you say nobody cares about that, Scott.
No, I don't. I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like that. You have to at least be able to get in somebody's way. I'm just saying that when you're talking about the top tight ends, they get mentioned because of offensive fantasy numbers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're H-backs who make $1.2 million a year.
Yeah. But all those tight ends are the ability to play in line as well, which dictates opposing personnel. It'll be interesting to see somebody like this offseason, not to steer us totally off track, but Mike Gesicki going to be a free agent from Miami, but he was essentially just a big slot. If you played him in line, teams are walking down a safety or a cornerback into the box to play him because he was that horrible as a blocker. So,
well, you mentioned Luke is 6'5.5", 255. So he'll be playing at 260, 265. He better be able to move somebody. There aren't a whole lot of linebackers out there that are going to be able to run with him that could match up with him as far as size goes at the point of attack, at the line of scrimmage. Luke Musgrave was really good. Cameron Latu from Alabama. He came in. He looked a little smaller by eye test, and he's 6'4.25", 248 pounds. So he's still plenty big. He had a nice rhythm going with his quarterbacks in the slot, and coming right down the seams. And the guy who had maybe the biggest catches out there, who had the most wow plays, another Big Ten guy, Payne Durham, Purdue, 6'5", 258 pounds. I've got some good stuff I'm going to put up on him before I get out of here. Just one of those guys, I've got a bias, Nick. It's the big receivers because you can just throw them open. It's like, I'm rolling out. There's 2 guys on them. Yeah, they're not going to get as high as he is. I'm just going to put it up and let him muscle rebound. Let him play power forward. He had a nice play for a touchdown like that got the defense, but got the offense fired up. But I would keep an eye for sure on Payne Durham. I don't know much about him coming in, but I knew about him coming out. That's for sure.
Payne Durham, man. Purdue's kind of driven me nuts the last few years because they have been beating up Iowa until this season. But Payne Durham impressed me throughout his career. He's also a damn good blocker. He's a classic Y tight end who's got the ability to do some stuff in the red zone. He's not going to be able to separate that much. He's not super explosive in his ability to sink his hips and change direction, but he's got a big frame. He can go up and play power forward and post up guys. And I'm thinking round 4 probably for him, round 3, round 4 for his ability. I wouldn't want him as my tight end 1 in the NFL. I don't think he offers enough explosiveness, but if you want to play a lot of 12 personnel, if you want to pair him with a more of your like him and Greg Dulcich for the Broncos would be a great pairing because he'd be a really good wide tight end for you that could play in 12 personnel. And then you have Dulcich who can do much more of the detached stuff at the point of attack, whether it playing slot, moving around, pre-snap, et cetera, et cetera. So it will be interesting to see where he goes, but I really like Durham coming out. Also, we got Diamond Rattler coming in $10, saying those picks are dope, Nick. What summit is that? I'm not sure what picks you're talking about because I post a lot of hiking photos on Twitter and whatnot because, it's unbelievably gorgeous out here in the Pacific Northwest, and I am very much an avid outdoorsman, not really into the hunting, but hiking, backpacking, and if you can combine fishing into all 3, you're the perfection. But that's... you're probably talking about either Rainier or Baker because that's 2 of the big ones that I'm out here on. But I've summited Mount St. Helens twice. I got dreams to summit Mount Adams this year. So we'll see what happens. I've climbed a lot of peaks out here. I haven't done any technical climbing, with the ice axe and the belays and whatnot, but maybe one day. But right now I'm enjoying my packs and sleeping out in the wilderness.
There's enough to do without hitting the fear factor too high, the danger factor. You can just make it tough. That's enough of a adrenaline rush. Yeah. Diamond, appreciate you coming in with the super chat, my friend, and the support. Going over real quick on the defensive side of sticking on the
Can I
we
talk
went
one
from
more
tight ends. We've
offensive
done
player?
offensive line, wide receivers,
Can we do one
and
more?
tight ends. And Nick wants to keep going a little bit before we move on.
Tajay Spears. We can't talk about the Senior Bowl without Tajay Spears. I think he was voted the best offensive player on his team. Had an incredible week, different movement skills than the other running backs there, and also showed some quick twitch and movement skills in the pass game as well. Now he has had a serious knee injury in his career, so the medicals will be big for him if you see him dropping in the draft. That's one that you want to watch out for. But that's I think Tajay Spears is somebody we can't go through this show without mentioning him at least once.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of going to skip linebackers probably until I start getting to the video of them, because the linebackers were solid too. They just seemed undersized to me. The inside backers all seemed like in the 215 to 220 range, and there wasn't that monster out there, like an Anderson or even a Muma last year in the 235 plus range. Tajay Spears, great acceleration. One of the things, it's hard to see because they're not allowed to tackle. And, as I'm watching this, I'm like, practice like you play. I'm like, well, no wonder nobody can tackle. Nobody tackles. But so what am I looking for when I'm out there and watching him? How fluid is he catching the ball in space also? Real good. He was real good catching that. So he's going to be a weapon out of the backfield. He's got the acceleration, the vision. He will be, again, he was a weapon out there for sure. I actually also like Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia. I thought he had a little bit extra one cut and burst. He had a little bit something extra out there too. And then Chase Brown at Illinois, I thought was solid. He was more of a tackle breaking. I know you said you couldn't tackle, but I liked his balance and as he's going through. So the running backs were good for me. The home run type weapons for me out of that bunch was Spears for sure. Then there might be an argument on the next guy. And for me, it probably would have been Kenny McIntosh. I just didn't think McIntosh was as easy catching the ball, so it's a little bit harder to get him in space as it is versus Tajay Spears.
Yeah, and in running backs really hard to evaluate in the practices. In the game, the format I think is better to evaluate the running backs just with the live bullets.
And linebackers. You can't tell either one of them unless you can't tell linebackers or running backs unless you're allowed to hit and be hit, which is games.
And because of that, somebody I think deserving a shout out in the game setting, who is never going to be a practice player given his skill set, but in games, tough to tackle. Chris Rodriguez, Jr. from Kentucky. He is massive. I think he's probably 230 plus pounds. You can probably pull up the measurements on that one. But I thought he looked really good, tough to tackle in the game. If you're looking for somebody to get you some hard yards between the tackles, always falling forward, maybe, that massive Latavius Murray type of body build. That is somebody who I'd be interested in for this team. He wasn't great in 2022 on tape because of how just absolutely horrible the weapons on the outside and the offensive line were at Kentucky. But Chris Rodriguez impressed me in the game. And if you're looking for, that big between the tackles guy, he's one.
Yeah, he was 5'11", 225. So he had 15 pounds on anybody else that was there.
He's a big dude.
And y'all have heard me say before, you take this comment out of context, I'm going to sound like a moron. But I'll take power over speed at this level. Everybody's fast. Everybody's fast. Give me the guy that's the 4.55, 4.6 guy that can break a tackle and has the balance versus the 4.4 guy who goes over at first contact. You've got to be able to get through that initial point of attack. And by the time anybody on the back seven who runs sub 4.6 can change directions and catch that guy, it's too late. It's 50, 60 yards. If he's a 4.6. So, basically a tenth of a second on a 40 is one step. It's maybe a step and a half. So by the time you get started and I go, you're too late. If I can break tackles and they have to change direction. Cristiano coming in right on time. He says, happy birthday, Nick. Hope the kindness and compassion you spread always circles back. What a great thing to say, Cristiano.
Yeah, really nice.
Any prospects that could replicate Kamara's success in Denver? So Alvin Kamara, who I wasn't overly high on coming into the league and has been used, all of a sudden was a star in a Sean Payton offense, in large part because of what a great receiver he was coming out of the backfield.
Yeah, Tajay Spears was really impressive in this game. I think he's got the ability to maybe be that kind of guy now. anybody is going to be Alvin Kamara, that's a lofty goal to get out there, because considering how great he's been at the NFL level. But somebody that really interests me in this Broncos type of Alvin Kamara role, just to add some athleticism to the backfield, is Acne, Akane, from Texas A&M. I think he's 5'8", 5'9", 185, 190 pounds. This dude is a track star out there at Texas A&M, 100-meter out there. I think also did some hurdle stuff. You watch him out there on the field. It's weird watching him run because it's almost like he's playing like in rookie mode with his speed difference compared to the other guys closing on him. He's going to be a little bit smaller. I think that's going to impact him in the pass blocking department, which is always a concern for somebody that size out of the backfield. But if you just put on the highlights of Texas A&M's Devon Akane,
the late pick from Kansas City that had so much success this year, Kansas City Chiefs,
Isaiah Pacheco.
How big was he?
He probably was about 200 pounds. I can look it up here.
He didn't strike me as overly big, though. But compact and strong and quick and tough to tackle. Again, there's a lot of different ways to do it out there.
He's pretty big.
Is he?
5'10", 216.
Okay, he's plenty big then. That's especially when we talk about the mass in an area, like pounds per square inch. He's big.
Yeah, BMI, right?
Yeah.
But no, he's one. I really like Pacheco, but let's be real, he's probably seeing more light boxes than anybody in the entire NFL because of that, and he runs hard. I really loved him in the draft last year. I mocked him to the Broncos 7th round, and he ended up being pretty good out there. I don't know if we'll see if you can find anybody like that this season, but again. Akane, I believe is the name. He's the one that I would be interested in maybe out there. Kenny McIntosh, also a really good receiving back. And then somebody we even talk about. I want to talk a little bit about running backs here, but I thought he had a pretty good week out here. Could be a round 4 pick. Eric Gray from Oklahoma. I think he's a little bit of do everything. Again, he's not explosive, twitchy like Alvin Kamara, but if you want somebody who can be an outlet out of the backfield, I think he's one that could be a pretty good one. He was pretty good at Tennessee in that regard. Transferred to Oklahoma. He was part of a committee there in Oklahoma this year, but he's somebody, if you want somebody that can do some stuff out of the backfield as well as being a running back with a fine body type, he's one that stands out to me.
All right, the last group I want to talk about before we get out of here is defensive line. Mm-hmm. We're going to wrap in edge in there too because they just say DL and it's easier for me to sort that way. But Nick, for me, the interior defensive line shined brighter than the edge position. And again, we talk about that, the big guys, there's better big men at the Senior Bowl than there are skill guys. And for to a certain extent, edge players are skill guys because it's a speed position as much as anything. You're not really worrying about the 40 on your 330-pound nose guard. So it's not totally surprising. That said, Kathy, if you're still listening, there were some small school guys that really showed up well. I was impressed. I felt really good about a team that needs some big men in the trenches being able to get some help. I said that last year, and I looked, and a lot of them didn't play. It's hard to get instant impact on the interior defensive line. But some of the guys that I really liked, we've talked about Keanu Benton, Wisconsin, one of the best guys there. He came in at 6'3.5", 312 pounds. The more I watched Yaya Diaby out of Louisville at 6'3 1/4", 264, as maybe that Boogie Basham for Bills fans out there, someone we really liked come out of Wake Forest, that tweener guy who could maybe play at 280 and in pass rush situations slide inside. Yaya Diaby was a problem he was too quick for the tackles, for the guards inside, and he was strong enough to work over the tackles on the outside for the most part. He was a problem, Nick.
Well, good. That's you mentioned him a few times out there from Louisville. So, see, Scott, I would have gotten that wrong before our show. So, progress for me. I would have said Louisville. And
well, one of the guys I'm doing some work with from Pittsburgh, he gave me a Louisville too. It's nails on a chalkboard for me. Louisville. No, it's not Louisville, Kirkherb Street. It's Louisville. Another one of the small school guys. I'm not sure how much you knew about this guy coming in. Jared Clark, Coastal Carolina. He was wearing number 15, 6'3.5", 343. He was carrying a little bit too much weight, but could slim down. And one of the things I liked about him, I think he was going against, let's see, it was OL. I think he was going against Oluwatimi from Michigan. If I'm going to butcher his name, hopefully I'm getting it wrong the same way every time. The first time they went against each other, he bull rushed him, just straight back, just folded him in half. Super strong. The next time he tried it again, and Olu met him this time. Okay. Then they went up a third time, and Jared Clark from Coastal Carolina, kind of dekes him and then walks right around him because he's so strong. The center, Otami, really had to gear up to absorb all of that power.
Yeah,
walked right around him. I'm like, okay. I mean, he was so strong in the middle. Someone I would keep an eye on is Jared Clark, Coastal Carolina. 34-inch arms, 82-inch wingspan, 6'3.5", 343. I'd like to see him in the 330 range.
I have to put some eyes on him. I didn't watch much Coastal Carolina this year. They kind of fell off a little bit from previously. I know their head coach was just hired elsewhere as well. So we'll see what happens with that Coastal Carolina team. That's been pretty good here as of late. Some names I did want to ask you about here. First, on the American side of the ball, Byron Young from Alabama. I feel like he's maximizing his ability, but if you're looking for a rotational defensive lineman, he's one that I think is going to be a part of a rotation for 6 years in the NFL as a backup guy that can do a little bit of 3 technique, a little bit of 4-eye and 5, and you'll be really happy with him. Probably round 4 or round 5.
Yeah, I think that's about right. He didn't strike me as a real high riser. 6'3", 300 pounds, 6'3" and change. He was okay. He wasn't great, and I kind of felt the same way about the other Byron Young from Tennessee, 6'2 and a half, 248 pounds at edge. So we had Byron Young edge, Byron Young inside, and neither one of them were great. They were okay at times. On that side of the ball, DJ Dale was okay. Before I move over, Nick, I want to stay on the national side real quick. Another Big Ten guy, and he won the I think he won the best defensive lineman, or at least from his peers. I think the offensive lineman voted for the DL and vice versa at the Senior Bowl, which is kind of a cool thing. But Ade Tomiwa, if you can pronounce his name, help me out here.
Ade Tomiwa.
And if you can't, that's okay. But Adi Bawore from Northwestern, 6'1.5", 284. There's Boogie Basham. He was so quick. His first step in his pursuit on the backside was really, really good. So he was in shape, all of those type of things. But Ade, number 99 Northwestern, definitely someone to keep an eye on.
He killed it out there. He's more of a 3 technique type out there. But if you're looking for a pure one gapping, penetrating type, he was almost unblockable for a lot of the season out of Northwestern. Had a really good game. If you want to go back, the weather in this game was absolutely horrific, but the trench play was still something you could dig into. And he was a problem versus Ohio State this year when Northwestern played Ohio State. It was like 50-mile-an-hour winds at like 10-degree temperature. So the passing game, if you watch that game, you're like, oh my God, CJ Stroud's horrible. Toss that game out for the passing game. But he was a problem up front in the trench matchups. Sticking on the national side on the interior defensive line, I also wanted to ask you. You mentioned Keanu Benton. You mentioned Yaya Diaby.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who I've heard some good talk coming out of the Senior Bowl out there is Nesta Jade Silvera, Forks Up, Arizona State, transferred from LSU. Is he somebody who stood out to you at all? I've heard multiple people mention him.
He was wearing number 3. It looked a little different out there, and I actually had him too high on my screen, so I didn't see him on there. But yeah, he was a 3-name guy, Nesta Jade Silvera, 6'1.5", 307. Did some good things inside. Again, I thought the interior line shined brighter than the edges on both teams. There were more good things for me on both sides of the ball, on both teams, American and national. And he did. He showed good quickness, good power. He I talked up the interior offensive line, and for the most part, I still think the offensive line got the better of the defensive line across the entire week. But he was a guy who's going to have several good reps that I'm going to put together and put highlights out of from Arizona State. On the American, flopping over to the American guy, Zach Pickens, the other number 3.
Yes, I wanted to hear about Zach Pickens.
He was really good from South Carolina, 6'3.5", 300 pounds, really high motor. And then Jalen Redmond, Oklahoma, number 31. He was relentless. One of those things I mentioned Jared Clark, Coastal Carolina, looked a little heavy for me. Jalen Redmond was relentless. So if he got beat, he'd win the next one. If they're rolling away from him, he's chasing them down. He was a super high motor guy at 6'2.5", 293 pounds. Good player for sure.
Yeah, that's good shout outs there. And defensive line edge rusher. I'm glad that you brought up Zach Pickens there from the interior too. He's somebody that I've been interested in. Some edge rushers on. Let's do national first on the edge rusher side of things. I was curious about somebody that apparently had a heck of a week out there. In Iowa State's Will McDonald, 35-inch arm length, beating guys across their face. He kind of played a weird spot out there at Iowa State because they played a 3-3-5 defense, and he was essentially playing 5 technique 4-eye, but then was able to get at it and played more edge this week. And with that length and movement skills, he might be somebody, if he tests well, to sneak into the back end of the first round.
Yeah, he was listed as a linebacker for a while.
He's an edge. I mean, linebacker. They need
but
to
he
be
did
better
play
with
edge because I've
yeah.
got him on my highlights, on the American highlights that I've got on my YouTube channel. 6'3.5", 240. So again, there's edge guys that are that's bigger than Will Anderson, who's being drafted as an edge and not necessarily a linebacker. So we'll see. He wasn't to me, there wasn't really a dominating edge guy. There wasn't a guy that just made me go, wow. There were some traits I saw. I saw a quick first step from Isaiah Foskey, but he got handled by the tackles. Keon White from Georgia Tech, edge, 280 pounds. Are you joking? And he tried to beat everybody outside, every time, outside, because he was used to just being able to run by guys. He couldn't do that here, so he didn't win all his reps. But when you're looking at the tools, how big was he? He was 6'5", 280 pounds, and a speed rusher. Okay, yeah. I'm real interested in that. So, again, we can talk about the edges, but I'm gonna say a lot of the same things. There wasn't really any of them that really, really jumped out to me on a consistent basis because the tackles, for the most part, handled them.
Yeah, weird to see this year. Weird to see this year with the edge rushers not winning against tackles given the space drills, and also wide receivers mostly losing to cornerbacks. So it's a interesting season. I see there's some Bigfoot chatter here in the chat. I'm enjoying that out here in the Pacific Northwest. Alessandro said,
"We've lost the chat. We've lost the chat with our Senior Bowl talk. We got a lot of folks. If you want to weigh in on something that we're actually talking about, please do." So there's more people watching than talking.
It's all good. Enjoying the the Bigfoot talk. The real place to see Bigfoot in Washington would probably be the Gifford-Pinot National Forest, which is south of Rainier. There's an old super volcano that's caved in on itself in an area called the Goat Rocks. Who's the guy that was in? Did you ever watch Arrested Development?
No.
I think the actor's name is David Cross. He was in a movie where he went to try to hunt Bigfoot out here in the last 4 years, and that was out in that area. So anyway, K-Hop coming in, Kenny McIntosh or Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet going home without even a question for me. He's might even be my running back 3 in this draft class. He's massive size, runs really hard. I really like Charbonnet. So that's not even close for me. You're talking about running back 3 versus running back 8.
No, I'm more of a Pinot guy. No, but Chardonnay out of California. I remember when he was going to Michigan. Is that where he ended up? Is that where he finished? I haven't watched him in a long time. I was watching him out of high school. Is that where he finished, or did he transfer?
He went to UCLA.
Okay.
So Michigan, he's been UCLA the last 2 years. His tape was great this year. He runs angry. Good. He's got great size. He looked like a Big Ten guy playing in the Pac-12, if that makes sense. So he was kind of miscast with his style out there, but he's going to be somebody who's going to go decently early, and he's going to be a darn good. I think he's going to be a really good running back. He's not super explosive, but he kind of reminds me of a less twitchy Javonte Williams out there because he just runs so strong, good contact balance, good vision. I'm a big fan of him. I was really impressed with his tape this year.
All right, I'm going to put a bow on this one with a question from Chris Walker by tying in 2 guys. One was an early question, and one was someone we just talked about. He asked, at defensive end and edge with size, that's something the Falcons have needed for such a long time, and frankly, everybody could use a big defensive end edge with size and speed. Who fits the bill? I just mentioned Keon White from Georgia Tech, 6'5", 280 pounds, could play a defensive end position. In fact, that's where he would belong early. You would hope he could develop into doing some of the things inside and holding up the point of attack, which I don't think he's had to do too much of yet. His pass rush skills are not developed. Those are usually the easy things to work on. Technique is easy. compared to 6'5", 280 and can run like a deer. That's hard. That's much harder to come up with. And then the other one, we mentioned Lucas Van Ness earlier today as well. Very similar in his size and ability to hold up at the point of attack and still beat guys with athleticism on the edge, Nick.
Yeah, there's going to be some edge rushers to have in this draft class. That'll be interesting. Yeah, Falcons it's edge and corner deep. Maybe you want to take one of those offensive linemen where it falls off a little bit up there in the top, and then you can circle back around round 2 and probably get a pretty good edge rusher or cornerback there with that next pick. So we'll see how it plays out. And we didn't get a chance to talk about cornerbacks as well, but Kathy saying, was Rush really the best cornerback in Mobile? I heard he did pretty darn well down there. I've heard more so that Julius Brents was the one who really stood out the most. But Rush, who played opposite Cam Smith out there at South Carolina, the Cox, really stood out and had a good week. It was a pretty good cornerback group this year. Also somebody that, again, we didn't really get to talk very much defensive backs, but I keep hearing Sidney Brown, the twin brother of Chase Brown from Illinois, the running back. Sidney Brown,
safety. He had to have been number 30. Yep. Number 30 at number 30 for the national team at safety.
Yes,
was it had to be him.
Yep,
Sidney Brown. Yeah, was good. Was really good. He's 5'10". That's okay. I can have one of those guys out there. He's compact. He looks like he delivers a hit, but he was really good in coverage too.
Yeah, he's one that was impressive in the reps I saw, and he's been getting a lot of play this cycle. So curious to see where he goes. He's kind of a matchup safety. They played him a lot in deep at Illinois, but I think he's got the ability to come up and play some coverage as well. So again, talking a little bit of Falcons here. If you're looking for somebody who can come in and play the slot from roll to roll, given how physical he is coming downhill, and you want to play Richie Grant more of that deep safety, rotating back, he'd be a very interesting one for me in Atlanta.
Real quick, one of the things I noticed very early during warmups on Rush was they've got guys on different sides of the field, offense and defense. They're kind of warming up, and as they blow them together to go to teams, they're all coming to actual stretches. They do some team stuff, some individual stuff before they actually warm the guys up, and then they all come together. Okay, why do I say this? Because the offense and defense were in separate parts, and when they all blow the whistle to come together, the offense is walking down the field. Rush comes out to them away from all the defense, and he's slapping hands with everybody, encouraging everybody, just out there. I mean, it's little things like that catch your eye when you're in person that you just don't get to see. The Rush was out there just being a leader. And I watched some bonding where everybody was celebrating. I don't normally see with this bunch, and it was fun. And Rush was part of that. And then he went out there, and by the gut reaction quick eye test, he was the best cornerback on that team for me. Like I said, just first reaction. The other one that just killed it was a Stanford quarterback, Blue Kelly, number 17, was everywhere. He had a really good week as well. Just a tick over 6 foot tall, 193 pounds, 32-inch arm length. He was pretty darn good too.
Interesting. I know he stood out, especially that day 2 practice and get a pick 6. That was pretty big out there. Question real quick from K-Hop before we get on out of here. Who's cornerback 1 in this class? Joey Porter Jr. or Keely Ringo? Neither. I think that we're seeing a top 2 start to emerge here in Devon Witherspoon from Illinois. Man, that Illinois team had some dogs on the defense this year. What a great unit out there Brett Bielema had in Champaign. They had 2 defensive tackles who didn't come out this year that I thought maybe should have come out, but really interesting to see what they have. They also have an edge rusher who's a sophomore who's going to be good. It's pretty frustrating to see that Big Ten West team so good. But Joey Porter Jr. might be the best press cover in this class. Keely Ringo, it seems like if you're listening to the national people here now, he's been knocked in the top 10, for a long time now, but then you have Daniel Jeremiah with him picked in the back in the first round. I think maybe not even picked in Mel Kiper's. Maybe I'm flipping those two, but Ringo's falling down a bit. The top cornerbacks, I believe, in this class, my number 1 is going to be Christian Gonzalez, just because he can play any scheme with the size, with the ball skills. Then Devon Witherspoon, number 2. Though I think those are the top 2.
I appreciate it. And on that note, I think it's about time we get out of here. We've gone almost 100 minutes, and thank you so much for everybody that decided to join us. This will be the last time I will be here until next week. I'll be on with the Mile High Huddle guys tonight in the background, but I will not be hosting or co-hosting a pod until next Wednesday or Thursday when we come back. So I'm going to be gone. Nick will be back for Broncos for Breakfast Tuesday morning, going solo. probably time for another mock draft. So he might run through that again for another Broncos mock draft. Talk a little bit of some of the news that comes out of Dove Valley. But everybody, thank you for being here with us today. Again, this was a Coast to Coast Football Falcons podcast, Broncos for Breakfast collab with me and Nick. The chat was great. Thank you everybody for being here. It'll be a week before I see you again, and I'm looking forward to it. So everybody, y'all have a great week.